I don't usually post on Reddit, but after talking to a few close friends about what happened, they convinced me that putting this out there might help. Maybe someone else has experienced something similar. I don't know. I've gone over this 100 times in my head, and none of it makes sense. But the more I think about it, the more I realize I need to get it out there, even if just to feel like I'm not crazy. This happened last summer, and trust me, I'm still dealing with the aftermath. Let me start from the beginning. So, I'm originally from the city, but I moved out to the Pacific Northwest a few years back for work. Beautiful place, quiet, lots of trees, really peaceful. I've always been an outdoorsy type, so the idea of living somewhere with access to forests and hiking trails was a dream come true. Anyway, last year I was going through a pretty rough time. Work was stressing me out, I'd just broken up with my girlfriend, and I just felt stuck. You know that feeling, right? Like you're just treading water, not really going anywhere? So I decided I needed a break from everything. A couple of friends had told me about this cabin they rented for a weekend getaway deep in the woods. They said it was the perfect place to unwind. Off the grid, no cell service, no internet, just you and nature. Sounded perfect. I reached out to the guy they rented it from, some older dude named Dale. He told me he only rented it out sparingly, mostly to people he trusted. But since my friends had vouched for me, he was willing to let me stay there for a weekend. I was stoked. He gave me some pretty specific instructions on how to get there. Things like, when you see the big pine tree with a rope swing, turn left, and follow the dirt road for exactly 4.3 miles. No GPS coordinates or anything, just old school directions. It felt like something out of a movie. I packed up my stuff, threw it all in the back of my car, and headed out one Friday afternoon. The drive took longer than I expected because once you got off the main roads, it was just dirt and gravel paths winding through endless trees. The directions were weirdly precise, but sure enough, I found the place. It was a cute little cabin, nothing fancy but cozy, with a porch that looked out over a small clearing in the woods. No other cabins or houses around, just trees for miles. When I pulled up, everything seemed fine. The air was crisp, the sky was that perfect shade of twilight blue, and the cabin looked inviting. I remember feeling this sense of relief, like, yeah, this is exactly what I needed. I grabbed my stuff, locked up the car, and headed inside. The cabin was pretty simple. One big room with a bed, a small kitchen area, and a fireplace. There was a little bathroom in the back, but no running water. Dale had warned me about that, saying I'd need to get water from the creek about half a mile away if I wanted to shower or anything. Not a big deal. I was there to unwind, not to live in luxury. So, the first night was uneventful. I made a quick dinner, read a book, and sat out on the porch for a while, just listening to the wind rustling through the trees. It was peaceful, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The weird stuff didn't start until the next day. I woke up early, probably around 6 or 7 in the morning, and decided to go for a hike. Dale had mentioned there were a few trails nearby, and I figured it'd be a good way to spend the morning. I packed a small backpack with water, some snacks, and my phone. Even though there was no service, I used it for the camera, and headed out. The trail started just behind the cabin and wound through the woods, getting narrower as I went along. I walked for about an hour, enjoying the quiet. The only sounds were birds and the occasional rustle of something in the underbrush. It was the kind of peaceful that makes you forget about all your problems, you know? But then, I found something that shouldn't have been there. I was maybe 2 miles into the hike when I stumbled across another cabin. Now, this part of the woods was supposed to be completely isolated, and Dale hadn't mentioned anything about other cabins nearby. It looked abandoned, old, with the wood rotting and windows boarded up. There was this weird feeling in the pit of my stomach when I saw it, like I wasn't supposed to be there. But I'm curious by nature, so I decided to check it out. As I got closer, I noticed something strange. There were no paths leading to the cabin, no sign that anyone had been there in a long time. The grass and weeds around it were overgrown, and the place had this eerie, forgotten vibe. I walked up to the front door, which was slightly ajar, and peered inside. The inside was worse than the outside. It looked like someone had left in a hurry. Furniture was overturned, and there were old dusty clothes scattered across the floor. But what really freaked me out were the markings on the walls. They weren't writing, at least not in any language I recognized. Just these strange symbols, carved into the wood, like someone had scratched them in with a knife. They covered almost every surface. At this point, every instinct was screaming at me to leave, but I couldn't tear myself away. I felt like I needed to understand what I was looking at. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and it smelled like damp wood and something metallic. It was faint, but there was definitely something off about the smell. I explored the main room for a few minutes, and then I found the door to the basement. It was slightly open, and the staircase leading down was pitch black. I didn't have a flashlight, but I used my phone to light the way. The further I descended, the colder it got, which didn't make sense because it was the middle of summer. When I reached the bottom, my phone flickered and died. I swear it had at least 50% battery when I started, but now it was completely dead. Panic set in. I was standing in complete darkness, in a creepy, abandoned cabin, with no way to see or call for help. I scrambled back up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. I could barely breathe. As soon as I reached the top, I heard something. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then it became clearer. A low, guttural sound like someone or something was breathing heavily just a few feet behind me. I bolted out of that cabin like my life depended on it, which, to be honest, it probably did. I ran straight back to the cabin I'd rented, not stopping once to look back. When I finally reached it, I slammed the door behind me and locked it. I sat on the floor, trying to catch my breath, and that's when I noticed something even stranger. My backpack, the one I'd brought with me on the hike, it was sitting by the front door. I hadn't taken it with me into the cabin, and yet, there it was, like it had been waiting for me. I didn't sleep that night. Every noise, every creak, every gust of wind outside made my heart race. I kept thinking about that breathing I'd heard, those strange symbols, and the fact that I hadn't seen any roads or trails leading to that other cabin. The next morning, I packed up my things and left without looking back. I didn't care about the weekend getaway anymore. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. When I got back to town, I called Dale to tell him about the cabin I'd found, but he sounded confused. He swore up and down that there weren't any other cabins in that area. I asked if maybe I'd gotten turned around, but he insisted I couldn't have, not with how specific his directions were. He told me to forget about it, that sometimes the woods play tricks on you, but I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. I haven't been back to those woods since. Something about that place wasn't right, and I don't think it's just the trees playing tricks on me. Something else was out there. Maybe I'll never know what it was, but one thing's for sure. I'm never going back to that cabin, and if you ever find yourself in the woods near the Pacific Northwest, be careful. You never know what might be waiting for you.